I got the text from my mother while standing in the checkout line at Fred Meyer, holding a bouquet of peonies I'd special ordered for the centerpiece. It was supposed to be for the rehearsal dinner table. My sister liked peonies, said they made her feel like she was in a movie. I just liked that she smiled when she talked about them. That text, though, it didn't leave room for smiling. Just a cold sentence. Her fiancé thought it'd be awkward if I came to the wedding. So they were uninviting me. Uninviting. Like a canceled reservation. What really broke me wasn't the nerve of it. It was how Mom worded it. Like she was reading off a script, all passive and polished. Said it'd be easier this way. For everyone. So I stood there, bouquet in hand, while the checkout light blinked and the cashier called next. I left the flowers on the counter and walked out. Didn't say a word. Now, here's the twist. Up until that moment, I was the one footing the entire bill. Venue deposit, catering, floral arrangements, even her fiancé's custom tux. They couldn't afford any of it. I'd said yes to everything because I thought family meant doing things you don't always get thanked for. I thought maybe it would matter, that I would matter. So I paused it all. Every contract, every order. And when the calls started coming, first frantic, then furious, I said nothing. Not out of spite, but because silence was the only honest thing I had left. They burned the bridge, holding up their big day, and I let it fall. Turns out the only thing I wasn't invited to was being taken for granted again. You know what's funny? I didn't even get mad right away. Not the shouting, door slamming kind of mad. No, I just went home, set the grocery bag on the counter, and sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. It was mid-afternoon, but the sun was already starting to dip. Fairbanks in October doesn't give you much daylight. I sat there until my coffee went cold. I thought about texting her. Not to fight, just to ask why. What had I done to become the problem? To be considered awkward at the event I was bankrolling? But I didn't send anything. Because I already knew the answer. I made myself too useful. Too available. The guy who always shows up, always says yes, always fixes things. Eventually, they stop seeing you as a person. You become a utility. She used to call me her favorite brother. Not that it meant much. I'm her only brother. But it felt like something once. Now I was a liability. An image risk, I guess. He didn't like how I took up space. Her fiancé once said during a dinner we all had together last spring. I thought he meant physically. I've got the kind of build that fills a room. But I think now he meant something else. Maybe I was too much a reminder. Of family. Of the past. Of anything messy and real. So I canceled the venue first. The woman on the phone sounded confused. I told her there'd been a change of plans. She offered condolences like someone had died. I guess, in a way, someone had. Just not who she thought. That night, I sat on the porch wrapped in a wool blanket I'd had since college. The kind with cigarette burns and one frayed corner I keep meaning to stitch. It's ugly as sin, but warm, and maybe that's fitting. I was trying to warm myself with something broken too. I kept going over it in my head, like a crime scene I couldn't stop revisiting. Not just the text, but the build-up. All the little things I'd chalked up to stress or poor timing. My sister pulling away after she got engaged. Her replies getting shorter. Calls less frequent. I'd asked her once if she needed help with anything, and she laughed. Not kindly, just like I was a joke she wasn't in the mood to explain. The truth is, I didn't just pay for the wedding. I offered. Insisted even. No one asked me to. I was the big brother. It felt like my role. After Dad passed, I became the man of the family. I don't mean that in a macho way. I mean I handled things. I was 24 when I helped Mom remortgage the house. 26 when I picked her up from her first chemo appointment. 32 when I moved back from Anchorage to help with her recovery. I stayed in Fairbanks. Took a job in property management. Not glamorous, but steady. I never moved back out. Not because I couldn't afford to. I could, but because they needed me. And maybe, deep down, I needed them to need me. I built my life around being the reliable one. The safe one. I never said it out loud, but I think I believed that earned me a place that couldn't be taken away. I was wrong. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be the next night. I knew the restaurant. I'd reserved the upstairs room myself. 48 seats, linen napkins, fixed menu. I'd gone over it with the chef 3 times. Now I imagine them scrambling, wondering who was going to cover the bill, whether to downsize, cancel, beg me to reconsider. They hadn't yet. I figured they were still holding out hope I'd come around, that I'd show up like always, card in hand, ready to smooth over the cracks. I wasn't going to. The silence from them was louder than any apology could have been. It said, "You're useful when we need something. Otherwise, we'd rather not see you." I had to sit with that truth, not just for their sake, but for mine. Because once you realize you've been cast as the help in someone else's life, it's hard to unsee it. That night, I slept on the couch, still wrapped in that old blanket. I didn't brush my teeth, didn't turn off the porch light. I just lay there, wide awake, with this gnawing feeling that something huge had shifted, not just between me and my sister, but in the foundation I thought we all stood on. By morning, they still hadn't called. I made eggs I didn't eat, watched toast go cold, and stared out at the yard. The leaves were almost gone from the birch trees, just skinny branches shaking in the wind. It looked like everything was trying to hold on to something it had already lost. I kept thinking about birthdays. Mine specifically. Every year growing up, there were quiet affairs, store-bought cake, a couple of cards, sometimes a used book or a jacket that didn't quite fit. Nothing extravagant. Not that I ever expected that. But hers? Balloons, pony rides, matching themed plates. And always someone snapping photos like it was a magazine shoot. That was the pattern. I wasn't mistreated. I was just overlooked. There's a kind of pain in being almost loved, almost praised, almost seen. I remember one year, I was probably 10, I made her a birthday gift, a hand-painted jewelry box with seashells I'd collected from a beach trip. She opened it, smiled politely, and set it aside. Later that night, I found it under the kitchen sink, half crushed beneath a stack of plastic grocery bags. When I asked her why it was there, she said she forgot. I told myself she didn't mean to hurt me. But the thing is, people don't need to mean it for it to leave a scar. So no, this wedding stunt wasn't new. It was just a grown-up version of the same dynamic. Me giving, her discarding. Around noon, I got a text from Mom. Not an apology. Just a question. Was I still planning to handle the final vendor payments? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and emailed the caterer. Told them to cancel the event, citing personal reasons. Asked for a refund on the deposit. Not because I needed the money, but because I wanted the record to show who walked away. By the time the florist called, I already knew they'd figured it out. Her voice was tense, professional, but I could hear the panic hiding under the politeness. She said the bride's mother had called, trying to confirm the final arrangement delivery. When the florist mentioned the cancellation notice, apparently there was a long silence. Then yelling in the background. I told her she wasn't in the middle, just doing her job. I thanked her for being kind. She thanked me for not taking it out on her. That felt like the most human exchange I'd had in days. An hour later, the text started. First from Mom. She asked if I canceled the flowers. Then the cake. Then the rehearsal dinner. Each message more frantic than the last. I didn't answer. Then my sister broke the silence. She wrote, I didn't know he was going to say that. I didn't mean to uninvite you. It got complicated. No apology. No owner's cheap. Just deflection. And somehow, she still thought I want to clean up the mess. She followed it up with, can we just talk? That one I stared at for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about all the times I'd shown up for her. Picked her up after breakups, moved her out of bad apartments, helped her write resumes when she felt lost. Every time she called, I came. Every time she needed a net, I was it. But this time, she pulled the net away first. I typed, I'm not the one who made it complicated. Then I deleted it. Not out of mercy, out of clarity. There wasn't anything left to say that would make her understand. Words weren't going to do what silence already had. That night, I cooked dinner for myself. First time in days. Pasta with garlic and canned tomatoes. Nothing fancy, but I actually ate it. Even did the dishes. I felt like someone stepping back into their own life after years of living in someone else's. And it hit me. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. The next morning, I went for a walk. Not because I needed the exercise, though maybe I did, but because I needed to feel something that didn't come from a screen or a silence that rang too loud. There's this trail near the Chena River, a quiet path where the trees arch overhead like they're holding the sky up for you. I used to walk it with Dad, back before his lungs started failing. He wasn't a talker, not unless you counted muttering at sports scores, but on those walks, we didn't need words. Just the crunch of gravel underfoot and the rhythm of shared breath. I hadn't walked that trail in years. But that morning, I laced up my boots and went. The air was sharp, early snow on the wind, the kind that doesn't stick but lets you know it's coming. The trees were bare, but there was something honest about them. No performance, no pretending. Just standing there, stripped down to what they really were. Halfway down the trail, I sat on a bench Dad used to stop at. The plaque on it still said his name. I ran my fingers across the letters, then just sat there, letting myself breathe. And that's when it happened. I started crying. Not loud, not dramatic. Just slow, steady tears that didn't need permission. Grief, yes, but not just for Dad. For everything. For the years I spent trying to earn space in a family that saw me as a service. For every time I swallowed disappointment and called it maturity. For the kid who once believed doing the right thing guaranteed you a seat at the table. I cried for him too. Then I stood up, wiped my face, and kept walking. That evening, I unplugged the string lights from a porch, took down the folding tables I'd borrowed from the community center, loaded the serving trays back into their boxes. All those small, invisible tasks no one noticed, no one thanked me for. I was undoing them one by one. The house was quiet. Mom was out, probably avoiding the confrontation she knew would come if she stayed. I didn't blame her, not entirely. She was always better at passive tension than active choices. Her whole life was built around smoothing over messes, never cleaning them up. There was a time I resented that. But lately, I just felt tired of trying to make sense of people who didn't make sense back. The fridge still held leftovers from the tasting menu we'd done 2 weeks ago. Tiny jars of lemon curd, candied pecans, a tray of smoked salmon no one had touched. I stood there for a minute, wondering if I should toss it all or let it rot. I closed the fridge. Then I turned my phone back on. 43 unread messages. Missed calls from Mom, my sister, one from a number I didn't recognize, probably the groom, finally realizing who was paying for the chairs his guests wouldn't be sitting in. One message stood out. From Dad's old number. It had been disconnected for over a year. But the voicemail hadn't been deleted from my phone. Just sat there in the backlog of unheard things I wasn't ready to face. I played it. His voice was raspy, tired. Probably one of his last calls before the hospital. He said he was proud of me, that I always did the right thing, even when it was hard. That was all. Just that. And for the first time in days, I smiled. The voicemail stayed with me the rest of the night. I didn't replay it, didn't need to. It wasn't the words so much as the way he said them. Like he saw something in me nobody else had bothered to name. Like he knew I was the kind of person who shows up, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. I sat at the dining table, the same one we'd had since I was a kid, and pulled out the ledger I'd been keeping. A plain spiral notebook, nothing fancy. Just pages and pages of wedding expenses, deposits, timelines, contacts. I'd started out of habit, wanting to keep things tidy. But now it felt like evidence. Proof that I was more than a footnote in this family story. I flipped through each page, reading the names of vendors, seeing the scribbles I'd made when things changed, when she changed the color palette, or he changed the groomsmen count, or Mom added yet another distant cousin to the list. My handwriting was all over that book. My time, my care, my money. At the last page, I wrote one line. No longer responsible. Then I closed it. I didn't burn it or rip it up. That felt theatrical. I just put it in a drawer, like someone filing away a case they no longer plan to revisit. Then I did something I didn't expect. I packed a bag. Just one. A few shirts, a book, my boots, Dad's old fishing knife I kept in the garage. No destination in mind. Just the sudden, overwhelming need to not be here when the fallout landed. I left a note on the fridge for Mom. Short, nothing cruel. Taking a few days. Don't call. I didn't leave my number. Didn't say when I'd be back. Sometimes absence is the only language people understand. I drove southeast, out past North Pole, and down the Richardson Highway. No GPS. No destination. Just followed the road until it felt far enough. I ended up in Talk, a town you don't go to unless you mean to. Gas station, diner, one motel with a flickering vacancy sign. I checked in under a fake last name, not to hide, just to feel untraceable. Slept like a stone that first night. Woke up and didn't know what day it was, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't care. I spent the day walking. Sat in the corner booth at a cafe that served watery coffee and dry pancakes, but the server smiled like she meant it. I watched people come and go, small town life moving slow and steady. No refarshaus. No expectations. And I kept thinking about that voicemail. Dad didn't say much in life, but when he did, it stayed with you. I think he knew Mom and my sister would always see me as the useful one. The guy who drives you to the airport but doesn't get a hug goodbye. The one who picks up the tab but gets cropped out of the photos. I don't know if he meant that message as a warning or a blessing. Maybe both. I thought about texting Mom, or even my sister. Not to apologize, I had nothing to be sorry for, but just to explain why I disappeared. But that would defeat the point, wouldn't it? I didn't know them closure. I owed myself peace. Back in the motel room, I stood by the window and watched the dusk stretch over the road. Trucks hummed past, people headed somewhere. For once, I didn't feel like I was supposed to follow. I was already where I needed to be. On the third morning in Talk, I checked my phone. Not out of curiosity, more out of habit. The screen lit up with one new message. From Mom. It read, "I wish you would have just told us you were upset. Your sister is devastated. The wedding was smaller, but still beautiful. I hope you find peace." There it was, her version of closure. Soft edges, blame hidden in sentiment. I could almost hear her voice in the way she wrote it. Always passive. always keeping the temperature low while the house burned down around her. She didn't ask where I was. She didn't say she was sorry. And your sister is devastated wasn't concern. It was guilt redistribution, a reminder that I was still, somehow, responsible for everyone else's feelings. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. Didn't reply. Because what was there to say? That I knew I'd been cut out the moment I became inconvenient? That I'd finally learned the difference between being loved and being useful? That I wasn't angry, just done? I closed the phone and slid it into the nightstand drawer. Later that afternoon, I walked down to the general store and bought a postcard. Cheap, glossy. A photo of the Alaska range with a moose standing in a field. No message on the back, just an address. I mailed it to myself because I wanted something, anything, to arrive back home that belonged to me and no one else. Something with no expectation attached, no request, no performance, just a small piece of me, returning to the life I was starting to claim. I got home 3 days later. No one was waiting. No notes on the door. No boy themes. The house looked the same, except for the vase of peonies on the dining table. Half wilted, clearly left behind from whatever version of the wedding still happened. I stood there for a while, just looking at them. Couldn't tell if it was a peace offering or a forgotten decoration. Either way, they felt out of place now. I didn't throw them out. I just moved them to the porch. A week passed. Then two. The text stopped. Mom sent one final message, something about how families go through rough patches. So we get back to normal eventually. But I don't want normal anymore. Normal was me disappearing into the background while everyone else took center stage. Normal was being the first call in a crisis and the last thought at a celebration. Normal was swallowing hurt so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. So no, I don't miss normal. I'm not angry anymore either. That's the strange part. The anger burned fast, left smoke. What's left now is quieter. Not peace exactly, but space. And space is enough, for now. Sometimes I still catch myself reaching for my phone, half expecting a new apology, or maybe an acknowledgement that things went too far. But nothing comes. And maybe that's the real gift, the silence that finally stopped asking me to explain myself. The postcard arrived yesterday. I pinned it to the fridge, not as a memory, as a reminder. I'm still here, and I get to decide what that means now.